We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. All kinds of strangeness this week. We're recording, on a Wednesday morning? We're all over the place. I'm scatterbrained. The topic list is in a shambles, so we're going to see what happens. We got so many questions, so let's try to just blaze through today. We'll see how that goes.
All right, let's start by not talking about that at all.
Yeah.
So, did I tell you that I saw Shazam?
Shazam. No, I don't think you mentioned that one. You said It.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was nice.
That was such a great little, cute little movie. My kids loved it. I mean, listen, DC, whenever Warner, whenever Zack Snyder doesn't touch a thing, I mean, it's amazing how it doesn't suck. Man, and the thing is I am quite literally a Zack Snyder fanboy. It's like some of the stuff he did prior to the DC stuff was just some of my favorite movies. I mean, not necessarily the best movies in the history of the world, but I loved them. I liked them a lot. And then he got a hold of Superman and ruined it.
Saw the disc release of Shazam? Is that because it's a good demo disc? It's a good HDR disc. It's a good Atmos disc.
Yeah, I got it from Redbox. It was a Blu-ray.
Oh, regular Blu-ray.
But
okay.
Yeah, regular Blu-ray.
But no, it's good.
But I am considering buying that one. That one's good enough to buy, I think. It's cute. It's got a lot going on there. It does fluctuate pretty heavily between really super kiddie and dark.
Right.
But that's sort of the character. Yeah. So
it's not
I'm kind of
that
okay with it.
dark. It's
No, it's not.
It's a barely PG-13.
It's pretty dark. I mean, there's demons everywhere.
Yeah, the 7 deadly sins.
Whatever. And they all look like they have absolutely no unique
Not
qualities.
very much.
I like how you couldn't have themed them up a little bit, just a little bit.
I like that Greed has lots of hands, but that's about it. That was about the only one I could identify. Yeah.
Yeah, Lust was.
I can't remember. I don't know. Yeah. Well, they kind of lampshaded that.
Yeah, probably a little bit. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by going to emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com, leave us a comment there. A website that I have been told that will someday be fixed.
It's in the works. Things are working on it.
We are
People are in
forward.
contact. So
people are emailing each other.
Yep.
Making it happen. Still, though, if there's anybody that wants to build us a website on a WordPress, take a WordPress thing and customize it for us, I will take it, and I will mention you a lot. So if you're into that sort of thing, we would be happy to accept your Listener of the Week donation. We also, if you want to catch us on Facebook.com/AVRant Podcast, it's a good way to contact us. And people have been blowing us up.
There's
on
been
Facebook
quite a bit of Facebook activity lately. Yes, a not small amount. Yeah.
Yeah, you can catch our YouTube videos at youtube.com/AVRant. Right.
Yep. Individual contact info. You sometimes throw that out there.
Yeah, I know. But I was just making sure that I can never remember which one I did.
The only one is YouTube. That's the short one.
YouTube, right?
YouTube is the only short one. Yeah.
All right. Contact Rob at avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. For those of you that are interested, Violet's doing well. She's an itty bitty dog who's scared of all the big things that are around her, but we're working on it. We're working on it. She knows lots of things now. She knows how to do stuff. She can sit. She can go to place, which is like a mat. She can go to her crate. She knows what a walk is, and sometimes that terrifies her. She likes car. She went from hating car rides to liking car rides. So we're making progress. And Daisy is a lizard that doesn't move very much. So we want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you can support the podcast in some way. If you want to do that financially, you can go to www.avrant.com and go to the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leave us a PayPal donation there. Or you can go to patreon.com with 88 other people who have gone there and sign up for a monthly subscription to support us monthly.
Yep.
Monthly subscription to support us monthly. That's too many monthlies, but whatever. So think of it as a continuing subscription, continuing support. So every month they'll take some money away from you, a minimum of $1, a maximum of infinity dollars, which you only have to do once.
Yep.
And then we will we will literally do the podcast from your house.
If it were Infinity Dollars, sure, yeah. No, it's
if it was Infinity Dollars, I am flying to your house once a week.
Patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. It's the long one. It's got podcast at the end if you would like to sign up. Thanks to our 88 patrons.
It should be our one listener or whatever it is. We'll do the podcast for your house. $10,000.
That's quite the underwriter.
If you can't support us financially, feel free to support us in some other way, like building us a WordPress website. And let us know what you did, or send it to me at tom@avrant.com. You can, so like AJ and Carl, they let Rob know that he forgot to put the correct lower third during the live recording session last week. So Lee Overstreet sure looked and sounded a lot like me.
That was a little bit of an editing job, because anytime the pictures came up, I had to take away the overlay I put in the completed version. So that was some actual video editing.
Why would you do that? Just leave it.
I'm not gonna leave it with it saying Lee Overstreet under you the entire week. It wasn't that. Thankfully, last week we didn't have that many pictures to show. I mean, not thankfully in an overall sense, but thankfully for my video editing time sense, that worked out. We got lots of pictures this week if we get through our like. You know what? I've like there.
Am I Tom underneath?
You
there?
are Tom this week. That's what it says right now. I'm gonna trust that that's correct. But yeah, oodles of questions.
Are you still Rob, or is it saying?
Mine never changes. Mine stays consistent. It's almost as though I'm here every week and rarely ever leave.
That is true. Well, Canadians are very reliable. Everybody knows that. Americans not so much. Plus, I live in a location that is
one scandal and we get rid of RPM. That's how it goes, no matter how popular he is.
I know.
It's certainly going to happen.
What do we got to do? Get rid of some people around here. I don't care what your political leaning is. I'm pretty sure there's somebody you would like to get rid of. So,
and apparently, the number of scandals does not matter anymore. That's
not in America.
Seems like
doesn't matter. All's forgiven, as long as you're a rich politician. If you're a mildly rich politician, you're out. But if you're super rich, you're good. All right, in the news, LG is adding NVIDIA G-Sync variable refresh rate support to its C9 and E9 OLEDs. The old ones? So that's
the brand new ones. That's I mean, that's the 2019 models, and notably does not include the B9, the least expensive, the one that has the lower end processor. So if you were looking for a reason why you might pay about $200 more to get the C9 over the B9, and you weren't worried about the professional calibration things that the C9 has that the B9 doesn't.
Now you have, if you play video games,
if you're a gamer on a PC with an NVIDIA G-Sync graphics card, because this will not work for ATI graphics cards.
Seems like really very specific.
Yeah, this is not FreeSync. And if you have an Xbox One S or X, then it already supports the HDMI 2.1 version of variable refresh rate, which is neither FreeSync nor G-Sync. It's its own VRR, variable refresh rate thing. So that already works. But if you're using a computer, then this will work with NVIDIA G-Sync now. But yeah, it's still a cool thing for people who have that.
Yeah, both of you. From our listener, Carl, Apple confirmed that their Apple TV Plus streaming service will cost $5 or $4.99 per month. If you buy any Apple hardware after November 1st, when Apple TV Plus launches, you'll get a year of the streaming service for free. And it supports 4K resolution, Dolby Vision, and Dolby Atmos. So
there it is. Yeah. It is only original content funded by Apple. So not a huge back catalog there.
I was gonna say, is it just like reality shows from like the Apple Store, the Genius Bar?
I mean, they've signed up a bunch of top end Hollywood talent to make content for them, and Apple has enough money that if they just wanted to buy, in fact, all of the Hollywood studios, including Disney, they have enough money in the bank to do it if they want to. So who knows? Sony seems like the only content creator out there who isn't making their own individual streaming service. So who knows? Maybe Apple will buy Sony. Just throwing that out there into the universe.
Oh yeah, then for sure, Spider-Man's definitely coming to.
Well, no, that's Apple, not Disney. So Disney's not buying. Well, Sony.
That's what I'm saying. So Spider-Man.
Oh, if
for
Apple
sure.
bought Sony, then,
If Apple bought Sony,
then Spider-Man is never
It's gone
coming
for
back.
sure.
Oh no, you know what? There was a clause in that contract for the split between Sony and Disney that if Sony is ever purchased, Marvel gets the rights back to Spider-Man, so Sony can't get bought. Maybe that's what Disney wants. Maybe Disney's like, hey, Apple, go buy Sony, then we get Spider-Man back.
All right, from our listener Nathan, engineers at MIT have created the new blackest material. Surrey Nanosystems Vantablock carbon nanotubes used to hold the title, absorbing 99.96% of all visible light. I love it when people try to take pictures of it.
Yep, there ain't nothing there. It's just confusing.
You're like, it's just black. And like, the thing is when you see it in person, it like blows your mind. But you see a picture of it, you're like,
it's just a hole in space.
It's just a black.
Yeah.
But the new MIT material absorbs not 99.96, but 99.995%. And that wasn't even their goal, really. They were trying to make a carbon nanotube material with higher electrical conductivity by growing the nanotubes on a layer of aluminum, but it ended up being the blackest material ever by accident. They dropped it. Took them forever to find it.
No kidding. Well, I don't know. It might actually kind of stand out, ironically. Even on a black 4, it's still much blacker.
It slid underneath the desk, and they were like, the little nanotubes rolled underneath the desk, and they were like, oh my God, we're never going to find this thing.
But stuff like this does have practical applications. I mean, especially in telescopes, that is the first place that they think to use it. But, I mean, in imaging stuff as backplanes for display technology, for DLP technology, I mean, if it's in any way affordable, which who knows what the cost is, but I mean, there are practical applications for a material as black as possible.
Can you imagine if your bezel around your screen was this stuff?
Right.
You're like, how would you even line it up? As soon as
you
you shot it on there,
really
it
would not see overscan. That is not a good way to get
the
pixel
overscan
perfect.
would not be.
One pixel goes over into that frame, you are not seeing it.
It's gone. So Sony announced that their version of a modular micro LED display, which they call Crystal LED, because of course they do. They should call it the Dark Crystal LED, and then Netflix could sue them. Is now available for. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't watched the new
Dark
stuff.
Crystal?
No, new Dark Crystal
I
stuff.
don't remember. I haven't watched the first Dark Crystal movie since I was a kid.
Me neither.
I don't remember liking it, so I don't know that this is something that's going to appeal.
It's still
to me. But
puppets. That's good.
I'm trying to get my way through the second season of Mindhunter.
Oh yeah, everyone keeps telling me to watch that too. It's not that I don't want to.
It's the strangest show. I've watched the show. I'm like 6 or 7 episodes into like the 10 episode second season. I don't think anything's happened. But the episode ends. I'm like, it's over already. Nothing happened. But yet I'm still interested. But nothing has happened this entire
That's
show.
binge watching stuff, isn't it? They're like, I guess I'll just keep watching until something happens.
Something's gonna happen eventually. All right, so they announced a new version of a modular micro LED display, which they call Crystal LED, is now available for the home market. Of course, with the price of each module being $10,000 and needing a minimum of 18 modules for a 1080p display, let alone the 72 modules needed for a 4K display, or as many as 576 modules for a 16K display. Calling this a consumer display might be a stretch. Compared to Samsung's The Wall, Sony's Crystal LEDs are not as tightly packed. Samsung's 4K is 146 inches diagonal, but Sony's is 220 inches, or exactly 16 feet by 9 feet, as it just so happens. So don't sit too close. Sony's modules fit together more tightly than Samsung's, though, so the seams aren't as visible. Contrast ratio is 1,000,000 to 1 and hits 1,000 nits. So for the first time ever, I experienced screen door effect. Okay. So it was a climbing competition this last weekend with my kids, and they took a projector and they beamed it up onto a wall so you could see like 3 or 4 different areas that you couldn't easily see from where you were sitting. But they blew it up so big, I was like, oh, that screen door.
And who knows what resolution the projector was? I mean, some of those business class projectors are like
no. They blew it up way too big.
Resolution.
They blew it up way too big. But it was interesting. So this is what we'll be dealing with.
Yeah,
we're going to be dealing with this thing. We're going to be dealing with the connections, how tightly that you can connect these modules together, and how densely packed
I mean, this
pixels
is
are.
clearly not
So-
a 65-inch display that is going to be replacing OLED anytime soon. I mean, people are excited about micro LED, but no, they're still considerably larger and
I mean, $18,000.
$180,000.
$180,000 for 1080p.
For
is
1080p.
ridiculous.
Yes. I did like that the 16K display is 64 feet wide. So, that's a normal sized room. Of course, that's a 16K display. Oh, also, it's not just $10,000 per panel or per module. There is also an installation charge. So the cost of the 4K display is about $900,000, even though it's only $720,000 for the modules themselves. It's a steal.
At some point, the price has got to get to the point. I refuse to believe that the R&D and everything that you put into this costs this much, and you should add something on top of that. Like when you buy like a really high end car, shouldn't have to go to the showroom to pick it up. It should arrive, and then somebody should wash it.
I don't know, Matt. There
wipe it
people
down.
people were lining up to buy it, and that's not even an exaggeration. There are lots of millionaires out there, and who are apparently willing to spend almost $1 million for a TV. So
64-foot wide.
well,
TV?
not the 16K one, but the 4K one. It's only 16 feet wide.
And that's how many? $720,000
$720,000 just for the modules, and then plus the installation fee, like about $900,000 all in.
I think that's stupid.
A little bit.
All right, streaming madness. NBC Universal is calling their streaming service Peacock because, well, I mean, I understand why, obviously, because they've had that Peacock thing forever, but that's stupid. And paid $500 million to reclaim streaming rights for The Office and Parks and Rec from Netflix. I could never get into Parks and Rec, but I heard that the first season sucked.
Yep.
But I couldn't. Whatever. Yeah. But I never really liked The Office either, but my son loves it. My 13-year-old son loves it. Probably not appropriate for him, but whatever. I'm a terrible father. HBO Max paid $600 million for 5 years of exclusive streaming rights for The Big Bang Theory, and $425 million to Netflix to reclaim Friends. And Netflix paid $500 million to get Seinfeld. So far, they're $425 in the black there.
That's right.
And they get Seinfeld. But they lost Parks and Rec in The Office. But Seinfeld. I would rather watch Seinfeld than Parks and Rec or The Office.
And
obviously.
Friends. Friends is gone too.
And whatever. Tinder. I saw somebody wearing a stupid Friends shirt the other day. She was like, she couldn't have been 17 years old. I'm like, shut up. Take that shirt off. I mean, don't actually take the shirt off. But seriously, you just stop it. Tinder. Yes, Tinder has a TV show coming in vertical aspect ratio that requires you to swipe to advance the story.
And with that, I am out. I am no longer trying to keep up with trends. I am not young. I am old. I don't understand how the world works anymore, and I officially give up.
Arr.
No, that's it. I'm done.
I sort of tapped out around Instagram. Like Snapchat and Instagram are things I comprehend as I sort of comprehend, basic philosophy, philosophical thought,
Sure.
streams of thought. That's the way I think of, like Instagram and Snapchat and that sort of thing. To me, it's just, I mean, it's a thing. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. I'm not saying that other people doing it is bad or whatever. I'm done.
Yeah, nope.
I can't.
I don't know Snapchat.
Yeah.
I don't know WhatsApp. I don't know TikTok. I know of these things. I've never used them. I'm officially old now, and when Tinder has a TV show where I must swipe to decide who my apocalypse partner is going to be, and if other people also swipe the same person, we might match in real life. I'm like, nope, I have no idea. I'm just, it's over. TV is foreign to me now. That's it.
It's all right. We're still ahead of the game. On a lot of things.
On the technical side,
yeah.
But on the content side and talking to other people who are younger than me, nope. It's all done. It's all over.
I was very amazed recently when I learned that if you put a period at the end of a sentence,
right? Yes.
When you
it's
are texting somebody,
stern.
It's considered, rude. Yeah. I was like, really? I just consider it grammar.
I know.
And then the person I was talking to, I was saying, well, usually, I mean, I just like voice to text it in there and tell it to put a period at the end. She's like, oh my God, you sound like my dad. I'm like, I am old enough to be your dad.
That would make sense.
So yes, I am.
And I'm sorry, but
And take that friend's shirt off.
Going.
You look ridiculous.
For laughing. That's not new. I'm sorry, Mad Cat was doing that on Inspector Gadget back in the 1980s, so that's not new.
All right. I don't even know what that one is. All right, we got a comment here. I don't know. It looks like there's two, but
we'll later.
All right, Travis. Last week we talked about how Travis hears a noise floor whenever he uses his in-ear monitors with his computer, even after he added an external USB sound card. We suggested an externally powered DAC and headphone amp, but Travis found a much cheaper solution. He uses an inline 220 ohm impedance plug to reduce the power coming out of his sound card's headphone jack. His in-ear monitors are very sensitive and low impedance, so he still has plenty of output headroom. It completely solved his issue, so he wants to make sure all AVRant listeners are aware of this cheap fix. That can, yeah. So if you have extremely efficient headphones or speakers for that matter, noise floor becomes much more of a driving issue, which is why most speakers are built to 8 ohm, the specification, because it sort of guarantees that it'll cover up deficiencies in many amplifier sections of lower end receivers. And
in headphones, like 32 or 64 ohm impedance is pretty common for a pretty easy to drive headphone or earphone. And then, of course, you do have ones that are 300 or 600 ohm. So adding a 220 ohm impedance plug, I mean, that I wouldn't recommend doing that with, say, a headphone output, because it's probably not meant to drive something of impedance that high. There is an impedance plug similar to the one that he bought that is a much lower impedance. I think it adds, let's see, 80 ohms is the other version of it. So that might be more reasonable. But in his case, he got a very powerful headphone amplifier, external one, that could drive like 600 ohm headphones, but then these ones that he was using are like 16 ohm earphones, which is really low impedance for earphones. Yeah. So he put in something that basically gives him about 236 ohms now, and it all seems to work. So good on you, Travis. That's great that you found that solution. It's like $7, so that certainly is worth a try, because heck, you can. I don't know, sending it back to Amazon might be more trouble than it's worth for that amount of money, but no. Good and that's a good thing to know about.
For everybody else who's like, oh, I'm hearing blah, 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 maybe I should try this. Just, make sure you do the math on these things and check out the impedance, because you don't want to do this with just any headphone or any output jack. You could create problems.
Adding the 80 ohm one to just about anything shouldn't cause like an issue. It might get quieter, but that shouldn't be a problem in any way. Yeah.
Right. All right, let's get to the questions here. Kevin asks, why don't we mention Vudu more often? Is it because it isn't available in Canada? We seem to be fans of the Apple TV 4K. I'm not, but Rob is, but whatever. And we've mentioned getting 4K UHD content with Atmos from iTunes. I haven't. Rob has. But Vudu has a good selection as well, and their app is available on most devices, at least in the USA, so where's the love? Yeah, I mean, we don't talk about a lot of stuff.
Not every episode.
The null hypothesis. Yeah.
It's not going to come up every episode.
I don't use Vudu all that often anymore. I used to watch it kind of on the regular, and their app used to be awful, and now it's less awful. So, and now they have free content that you can watch that has commercials, which is not bad, except for the commercials, which suck. But that was the whole point, to get you to buy the stupid stuff. I'm cheap, and I don't like to buy things. I don't like to purchase digital copies of things if I can get away with it.
Yeah, because
if I can't download it, then Vudu goes away and I don't have that movie anymore. I'm going to be irritated.
Yeah, I mean, Vudu still is either more pay per rental or purchase the movie and just have it in your digital locker. I mean, I wish Vudu and the entire Movies Anywhere ecosystem would come to Canada. I mean, part of why I don't mention it is that it isn't available in Canada whatsoever. We don't have Movies Anywhere in Canada, and I really wish we did. So certainly for Canada, I'm going to suggest iTunes, because that is about your best bet without question. I mean, as far as what's available and in the high quality. I wish Vudu were here in Canada. I mean, Vudu's no non-love. That's certainly not the case.
I just don't use it. I don't use it that much. The ones I use are Hulu, Amazon Prime, and Netflix. So that's what I talk about. If occasionally I'll use Vudu and I'll mention it, but generally speaking, I don't
we
use
do
it.
tend to focus more, or I mean, it's just in the zeitgeist.
Everybody tends to focus on things that they
streaming.
actually have.
Well, it's not. It's just that streaming is more in the zeitgeist right now, as opposed to pay-per rental or actually purchasing digital lux stuff. But no, Vudu service is great. The library is great. It's awesome that it's part of Movies Anywhere, and the quality is there. So yeah, it's good stuff. There was sort of a related news story of Vudu this week. They're adding new parental controls to automatically skip or mute mature content. So that reminds me of the old Blockbuster versions. Remember how Blockbuster used to have censored versions? Although, I mean, this is optional, so okay. I don't have a problem as long as stuff is optional, right?
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. To me, this gets back to this idea from a parent standpoint. What I consider okay for my kids to watch and what you consider is okay for my kids to watch is not necessarily the same thing. So if I don't have very fine control over those things, then I'm not interested in engaging. They can either not watch it at all, or they can watch it with me, and I'll literally reach over and cover their eyes if I think there's something they shouldn't be saying.
But the other little bit of news is Vudu has announced they've got their first original series that will be exclusive to them and funded by them, and why everybody just has their own. There you go.
Whatever. No one cares. Stefan took our previous advice about how much he needs acoustic treatments in his cinder block bunker of a room in stride. He'll be adding panels soon and also doing some painting to hopefully improve the projector experience. It was like the all-white one.
It's
all-white room.
All-white.
Cinder
It
block.
is cinder blocks. It has the bare roof with the exposed ceiling joists in kind of a tented shape in there. So yeah, you need acoustic treatments. Darkening what you can for your projector will be beneficial. All good stuff, Stefan. I'm glad that you took that all under advisement.
Yeah, I hope we made it clear when we gave him that advice. I mean, of course we're gonna have our fun and try to be a little entertaining, but the reality is, having a room that's dedicated to a theater is way better. No matter how bad that room is, it's still way better than not having a room dedicated to a theater.
Yes.
I'll take it any day of the week and twice on Sundays. So he's been looking into Auro 3D recently, him and about 7 other people, and a fair number of people seem to think it can be a bit better than Dolby Atmos, specifically the people who have invested in it and want to convince other people to do so on forums. Particularly for upmixing. Of course, setting up Auro at home means the most restrictive overhead speaker options, although the combination of front heights and rear heights can be used for all 3 immersive audio formats. So if you simply want the option, can front heights and rear heights still sound just as good for Atmos as top fronts and top rears?
I hope so, because that's what I use.
To me, as long as you scoot them towards as close to you as you can, based on what Auro 3D and where the Auro 3D and the Dolby Atmos overlaps,
I see, okay.
I would be okay.
Yeah, I mean,
personally, I would make absolutely no
concessions for Auro.
for Auro 3D. I just don't see it. I honestly believe someday somebody is going to make a upmixing thing that says, okay, you've got top middles, we're gonna treat them as mono, and that's
your voice of God. I know why that isn't a thing already.
Why that's not a thing baffles my mind.
But nevertheless, it is still the top surround, as the official name, is still its own separate little thing in Auro. Front heights and rear heights, it's absolutely a supported configuration for Atmos and for DTS:X. It is what I use. I mean, as long as you have above you, to the left, to the right, in front and behind, then sounds can be steered the way they're more or less meant to be steered. I mean, I would avoid, if you can, the thing of just high up on your front wall, high up on your back wall. It doesn't really, in my opinion, give you the, certainly not the most noticeable effects of being above you. So if you can have them on your ceiling at about a 45-degree elevation angle, that's great, because that can be labeled front height, rear height, no problem, and it is compatible. Auro says, have your front heights and rear heights somewhere between 30 and 45-degree elevation angle. So if you use a 45-degree elevation angle for everything all around, it works with everybody.
So he asks, do you still have to purchase Auro separately for the Marantz SR7012?
So the 7012 was the first year where it was included out of the box. So the answer to that is no. I hope that is the correct model number that he listed. So the 7010 and the 7011, you had to pay $200 extra to add it optionally. From the 7012 on upwards, now to the 13 and 14, it was included out of the box.
All right. Jason plans to replace his current B7 OLED with the Epson 5050 UV projector and a 100-inch screen. His room is open at the back to his kitchen, and there's an opening with no door on the left wall just behind his couch. There are windows on the front wall and the right wall, so his screen will be covering a good portion of the front wall window. He plans to sit 10 feet from the screen. All right, so we're looking at this room. To the right of the theater, there is a... directly to the right of the couch, it looks like there's a fireplace, a stone fireplace. There is, what do you call those barn door looking things? Those slide, like farmhouse doors or something, right? That go over the window.
Yeah,
it looks like.
I'm not sure the proper technical. Yeah, but it's a wood door that slides, and so
that hangs on a bar and with wheels, and you slide it over.
Yeah.
So that goes over the front right window
to open the
door.
door.
And then there's looks like there's two windows. There's no door there?
I mean the door, the sliding door. I mean, there's something behind it now. So it's not just...
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what's back there.
I don't think it's just a cover
wall.
for the window. I think that is a door going outside or something. I don't know.
No, there's not. Look below the door. There's nothing there.
Well, why is it there then? What's it for? Can't just be to cover the window.
I don't know. Maybe
I'm pretty sure there's
a cubby
something
back there or something.
I'm pretty sure there's something back there.
Whatever. I don't see how there could be with their window being right there. But anyways, there's a window. There's two windows to the behind the front right speaker. Yep. Let's see here. Open to the back, it looks like. And his left... Wait. No, he's on a back wall. His couch is...
No.
What is that?
Open at the back, and it's an L-shaped couch. So to the left of his couch.
The left of the couch is on a wall, but directly behind that is an opening. Okay.
Yippers.
All right, here we go. So he's going to go from OLED to a 5050 UV projector. Mm-hmm. Jason's understanding is that the Stewart film screen is still lauded as a brand, sure, and sort of considered the standard. He's seen reviews saying that IlluneVision's reference Studio 4K screen comes really, really close to Stewart's quality, and IlluneVision costs less. But then, of course, there's Silver Ticket, which, according to reviews, isn't quite as good as Stewart, but is still remarkably decent. And of course, Silver Ticket costs way less. So would IlluneVision still be the value choice, even at about 5 times the price of the Silver Ticket screen? Would it be worth it? No.
If it's a fixed frame white screen, it's not worth. I mean, on an objective measure it basis, is the IlluneVision and the Stewart still technically a bit better than the Silver Ticket? Yes, but it is not worth 5 times the price for a fixed frame white screen. Now, where you might get into it is if you're going acoustically transparent. IlluneVision's acoustically transparent is excellent.
Or like a tab tension
motorized.
Yeah, motorized.
Those are the things.
That's where we start steering you to other places.
That's
if you're really looking for, to me, I mean, Stewart's great, but if you're really wanting to spend the money and get the best of the best, you're looking at Seymour.
Yeah, although I'm not sure if Jason is in the U.S., because if he's in Canada, IlluneVision is more cost effective because they're a Canadian company, so that might be part of it. But yeah. Unless you're going motorized, tab tensioned, and or acoustically transparent.
Well, he's saying that IlluneVision is 5 times the price. That wouldn't be the case if he was in Canada.
Well, a fixed frame white screen it is versus Silver Ticket.
Is it really?
Yep.
Wow. All right, so he's got 2 subs, one SVS SP4000 and one Golden Ear Force Field 5, positioned diagonally to each other, one in the front right corner, one and the other behind the left side of the couch. That's diagonally across each other in the space in which you are listening.
Yeah, in the theater area, but certainly not the room or the open air space as a whole, since we have this large opening behind the couch out to the left. Going up the stairs and into the foyer and everything.
Yeah, he's got stuff all over the place. But there's still the entire space of the kitchen behind the couch, plus the opening on the left wall. They seem to play nicely together the way they are now. So would we recommend a different placement? And would we say he needs to ditch the Golden Ear to get a second SVS? Is there anything comparable to the SB4000 at a lower price that would integrate well? So when you get up to the SB4000, you're looking at a really high performance, but also really good fit and finish.
Right.
So when you start low, trying to get something that gives you a similar performance, you're going to be maybe sacrificing how it looks. So
right, because I could point you to Monoprice's 15-inch sealed version.
Yeah.
That is comparable in output and extension to the SB4000 at a lower price. It's like sharper corners, a vinyl wrap finish. So Tom is absolutely right. It might not look quite as nice. It's not the rounded edges in that, but in sheer performance for price, the Monoprice 15-inch sealed version is what I would point you to, if that's what you're looking for.
Right.
Now, so, I mean, if you're like, things are playing together nicely, and as far as you're concerned across your couch...
This is very much a don't poke it situation.
Yeah, because, I mean, what are you going to... I mean, you're not going to put a sub in your kitchen. You're not going to put a sub out in your hallway. And, I mean, it would be experimentation. It would be pure trial and error, because we can't predict what's going to work in a, uneven space like this. Is not a rectangle, because you got that opening on the left.
Yeah, until we start getting quantum computing, I don't really see us being able to model the acoustic vibrations within a non-uniform, non-rectangular room that you're in. It would take a whole lot of calculations to figure out exactly where to put these subs for the best performance for your seating area. So in my opinion, when somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm in a non-uniform room, I've got two subs that in my mind, me being Tom, thinking, okay, these are two subs that are fine. There's nothing wrong with these subs. It's not like, I've got this, SB4000 and this home theater in the box sub. They seem to be working well together. Well, then I start thinking you need another sub. But you've got two subs that are fine. They're working together pretty well. You seem to be happy with the bass. I would not start messing with this, because this is just going to lead you down a rabbit hole of that would perhaps make you in the long run less happy than you are right now.
Agreed. Yeah. So I mean, the force field that you have, it's certainly a capable sub. I mean, do we poke it at all and say you play a bass sweep and C? I mean, that's as far as I would tell you to go, and I'm telling you to go farther than Tom is telling you to go, because Tom is saying don't do it at all. But the most...
Ignorance is bliss in this case.
The most I would tell you to do is play a bass sweep, and if you're like, it gets obviously uneven below 30 hertz or something because the force field isn't playing quite as loud as the SB4000 is, that would be the only justification for replacing it, but I wouldn't futz with your placement, and honestly, I'm not going to tell you that you need to upgrade, because you don't need to.
Right. So his front towers are Tannoy Revolution XT8Fs. He knows that I had a bad demo experience with Tannoy speakers, but Jason loves them. And honestly, I've said this 1,000 times probably. That was a terrible demo.
Right.
But I didn't blame the speakers. I blamed just about everybody else in that room, though. Because somebody sat there and said, this sounds good. Let's blare at them at beyond reference level when they're sitting 3 feet away from these speakers. It was ludicrous. That being said, I did love the hat I got. They gave out a really good swag hat. I wish I still had that hat. That was one of my favorite hats of all time. All right, Jason doesn't like the supposed matching Tannoy center at all, so he's stuck to using a phantom center. His Tannoy towers use concentric drivers, so do we think a KEF center might match well with them? Any other center speaker recommendations we might have? So when you're... So one of the problems I have with one of my issues is that I don't know that much about Tannoy speakers and how they are trying to sound. Are they trying to sound flat? If they're trying to sound flat, then there's lots of recommendations I can give you. If they're trying to have their own sound, it becomes much harder. But one of the first things you want to do before you even start to answer this question is look at the impedance and the sensitivity of your speakers. If the Tannoy speakers, which I don't know what their sensitivity is, but if the Tannoy speakers are really high, you can't just go place them with any other speaker. I can't say go get an RBH, because RBHs don't tend to have really high impedances or really low impedances, or whatever. They tend to go right around 6 to 8 ohms, generally speaking. So it would not necessarily be a good match. What does that mean? Well, that means that in order to level match your speakers, the Tannoys would have to be cut way down, and the center channel would have to be pushed way up by your receiver. And that could work, but you may find like -12 on the Tannoys and +12 on the center channel, and they're really not level matched. And it could really put some strain on your amplifiers, and actually put a lot of strain on your center channel as well.
Yeah, so I mean, this is my opinion, but I probably wouldn't be matching a KEF with a Tannoy. like, I'm not sure that Tanois are actually concentric. I think they're coaxial, which is not the exact same thing. And even if they are, just saying, well, this has a concentric driver and this has a concentric driver, so they should match. It's like, no, there's considerably more to it than that, because
it's not the same as like horn loaded. With horn loaded, you tend to and horn loaded. When we say, oh, you got a horn loaded speaker, you should look for another horn loaded speaker. Well, that's more not about the horn,
about the efficiency, the sensitivity.
It's about the efficiency, because the horn loaded tweeters tend to be very, very efficient. Therefore, you can match them together sort of as shorthand. But the reality is, we're really looking at the sensitivity of the speaker, not looking at the type of tweeter.
But I wanted to give Jason just an option. I'm not going to guarantee whatsoever that these are going to match really well with your Tanois, but I think it's possibly worth a try if you're only getting one and can send it back and get a refund, which is HSU's. This is Tom's favorite HSU speaker, the one with the yellow cone driver that you think is absolutely hideously ugly, but you can cover it with the grill. It's their CCB8. This one does have the sort of sensitivity and, as far as I'm aware, the coaxial driver arrangement that's closer to what Tannoy uses. So to me, it's worth a shot to try that CCB8 from HSU if you can get past the yellow color of the woofer.
Well, I mean, okay, so my question is, do you still have the Tannoy center? Because if you don't have the Tannoy center, well, then okay. But if you do have the Tannoy center, was your problem really that the timbre matching wasn't that good, or was it a placement issue, or was it, was there some other stuff going on? Because maybe there's a way that we can fix this with the actual speaker that you already have. So you maybe get back to us on that one. So he wants to install side surround speakers, but he isn't sure where they can be installed. He's thinking that having them descending from the ceiling might be his only option. What do we think, and what speakers would we recommend? Again, level matching is going to be, or impedance matching is going to be an issue here. But
I'm looking at, so I mean, he's got space on the left wall just behind his couch before we get to the opening. There's a little bit of space
on top of that subwoofer.
On the wall there. Yeah, right above where the subwoofer behind his couch is. Yeah. And then on the right-hand side, there is some wall space between his fireplace and the patio door. So it's not as though you have nowhere that a speaker could be mounted on the side walls in a very appropriate place for side surround speakers without them having to descend from the ceiling. So I think that's doable. I mean, that's where I would have
be okay with that. I would definitely, especially for the right wall. If you're not going to mount it onto the brick, which
I wouldn't do that.
You would need something that would protrude a little bit, at least a little ball and joint or whatever.
But there's lots of speaker wall mounts that stick out a bit. So yeah,
those would be fine. You could do it that way. You could also do something like the prime elevation speakers.
That's true.
Something close to the ceiling up there that's angled down towards you. That would be those would be my two options. I would look, and there's more than just one. Now, prime elevation has almost become like Kleenex. It's like, I'm talking about an angled speaker, which again could be the Boston acoustic ones that we talked about a number of times.
Yeah,
and you're sitting close enough to these speakers that impedance matching becomes less of an issue, because you don't have you're sitting so close that the power that you have to put in to get to the same volume is quite a bit different, or quite a bit lower.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, again, if you give that CCB8 a try as your center and it works really well, that could work as surrounds too. So that's another option.
So what would we recommend that room treatments be placed in his setups? Okay, so let's look here.
It's a bit tough.
Well, you've got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be covering a lot of that front wall with a screen now, so we can't really say most of the front wall, because that's but largely going to be screen.
So your speakers are going to be out to the side. So I would put, if you can, a freestanding one on the right side.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, I guess you could even mount it to that door.
Yeah, then just roll it in place. And then something on the left wall for sure. If you can put something behind the speakers, that'd be great.
I mean, the front corners are certainly a candidate. You should be able to do something in the front corners.
Yeah, if you can do like a tri-trap
type of thing in the front corners there for sure.
Super chunks or whatever. Then whatever you can put on that left wall. I mean, I don't really see you being able to do anything on the ceiling, and because there's a fan basically right where you. And
it looks like a textured ceiling too. And I mean, I would highly doubt that anything's going in the kitchen. So yeah, I mean,
right. The only place in the kitchen you might be able to consider is underneath, like a thin panel, just like layer the entire underneath the bar. area right there, just like
below the
down
countertop,
there.
basically.
Yeah, below the countertop down there. People are going to kick it, but whatever. It's just insulation. Who gives a crap? So
that would be about it.
That would be where I would recommend. I have done something. Oh, nope, I undid it. Ben watches content from several different sources: cable, streaming, discs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's all. Is there any other sources? The internet, I guess, but that's still streaming. So he uses subtitles on a regular basis, and not all of these sources allow you to control the exact placement of where the subtitles show up on the screen. So what option does he have when using a 2.35:1 constant image height setup?
Yeah, that's one of the pitfalls of the 2.35:1.
Yeah, so you would, if it's a 16:9, you would shrink it so that it fits within. You basically have black bars on the right and the left.
Well, not even black bars, just blank.
Blank.
Right? It's
right.
not. It's
well, I mean that makes them black, but whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but
it's not being projected.
Yeah, there's
there.
nothing being projected onto it. It'd be blank. So you could just zoom. What would you say? Out, I guess, the image, making the image smaller so that the black bar that is being projected becomes visible, unless he's using a whole anamorphic lens setup where it is, digitally stretching the images first and then going through a lens, which means it's like actually cutting off the subtitles sometimes, the ones that go down into the black bar.
You should do, I think, what I have always recommended, which is throw out that 2.35:1 screen and get a 16:9 screen and have black bars on top and bottom.
I mean, I know, you know what, 2.35:1 screens are a bit of a theme in today's questions because we've got other ones coming up with it.
Well, get used to me saying that because I'm going to say it the entire freaking podcast.
I know they're popular, and I know there's a lot of advocacy for going for the ultra wide cinemascope screens. I am not a fan of it. I am a fan of getting a big so that your side to side viewing angle is what you want it to be, but then make it 16:9 at that width. And first of all, projectors these days have pretty darn good black levels, so I'm okay with the black bars above and below. But if you can't stand them, there are manual masking type screens that you can do. Yeah. They go up there with magnets, like what Seymour AV offers. Seymour AV has a really cool solution now for 4-way masking that I actually really like, which is you get a really big 16:9 screen, right? So when it's IMAX time or subtitle time, they use the manual masking panels for the top and the bottom, right? So you can turn the big 16:9 into CinemaScope, into 2.35:1 with the magnet panels on the top and the bottom. But then they're motorized panels on the left and right, so you can do the cool thing of motorizing your way between, smaller 16:9 and super wide, and then on the rare occasions that you need the gigantic screen, you just manually pull those down. I'm like, that's a cost-effective way of doing 4-way masking without having to be motorized 4-way masking.
The thought of having a huge 16:9 screen and then projecting a smaller 16:9 image in the center of it with black masking boggles my mind.
I don't want my TV to be bigger than my movies. That's,
Shut up.
I get it.
It makes no sense.
It makes perfect sense. But
it does not.
Having just a 2.35:1 screen does cause these problems. So
I did not buy a big screen to watch the center of it. I am sorry. What is wrong with you people that you would even think that this is a good idea? I swear I am the majority here. I know. I feel like a voice crying out in the wilderness over here. Yeah. I swear. You grab anybody off the street and you explain this to them and they're going to think I'm right. I don't care who it is.
I don't know about that. Some people love. So anyway, if you love your ultra wide screen, so it's a bit tough without going to. So what can you do? If you're getting it from a streaming service and they're putting their subtitles where they put them, I don't think feeding that even through a super high-end video processor is going to fix that issue.
No.
You'd have to go the route of it being like a home theater PC where you can get into something like using Mad VRs because the subtitle is a separate file. So then you're manually editing the subtitle file so that it shows up in a different place. It starts getting pretty into it to solve this issue. So honestly, something like having an this sounds ridiculous, but an optional piece of fabric that you can roll down just slightly below your screen just to catch the subtitles.
I just really think it's funny that you just said this sounds ridiculous after everything else you've already said.
Well,
this is the thing right here that sounds ridiculous. This is it?
Yeah.
Not buy a huge screen and not use it? Not that part?
But I mean,
only use it for the IMAX image, the IMAX parts of Batman Returns or whatever it is, or Dark Knight Returns.
The most reasonable, cost-effective thing to do is just to re-zoom your projector, so that unfortunately it's not filling your whole 2.35 to 1 screen, but at least you can see the subtitles now. That's the most reasonable and cost-effective. The second easiest, but obviously costs money, is replace your 2.35 to 1 screen with a 16:9 one. That is the same width, but now just taller. But obviously that costs money. And otherwise you're getting into either screen masking type of stuff, adding a piece of fabric that you can optionally roll down just to catch the subtitles, or digging into doing everything through a home theater PC.
Okay.
Yep.
Andrew would like some more clarification about the differences he heard when he used a demo disc of a helicopter flying around. He played it on his Xbox One and he tried listening to it in Atmos and then in DTS. He sent a link to the exact demo disc, and it's a Dolby Atmos demo disc, so everything is encoded in both Dolby True HD 7.1 Atmos and Dolby Digital Plus 7.1 Atmos, according to the track list. He says he changed the audio settings on his Xbox One. The first time it said he set it to bitstream output, and his Denon receiver, his S720W receiver, said it was playing Atmos. Then he says he set the Xbox One to DTS output, and the receiver said it was playing DTS Neural X.
Yep.
As he described last time, which I guess I wasn't here for.
That was when Lee was here. Yeah.
All right. When it was playing Atmos, the helicopter only seemed to pan side to side. No front to back panning or circling, but when it was playing DTS Neural X, you got full panning all around, and it just sounded a lot better. So could we explain it all in more detail? Is this Denon the weak link? Nah, it's the Xbox One, Haas.
Here's the thing. So I'm going. So I think in his email he just said 720W, and I'm like, okay. Is that actually the S720W, or did he miss a zero and he was actually talking about the 7200W? Because that makes a world of difference, because I'm going that it was the S720W, which at a maximum can do 5.2.2. So that would entirely explain not having any front to back when it's playing actual Atmos, because it only has, like, say, top, middle, left, and right. It can't do 4 overhead speakers if it is the S720W. So that is very important. Now, if you missed a zero and it was actually the X7200W and you do have 4 overhead speakers, then that helicopter should have been moving front to back in the actual Atmos, because if it's encoded in Atmos and it's an object up there, that thing is circling around. So I suspect he does have an S720W. That's obviously far more affordable. And that would explain not having any front to back panning playing actual Atmos, because you only have a maximum of 5.2.2, not 5.2.4. So that could be part of it. Now, when it is output as a DTS signal instead, so, okay, let's continue on that track, and then I'll double back. If it's output as a DTS signal and then the DTS Neural X up mixer is being applied, well, now it is just trying to do the best it can of moving the sounds wherever it can, including into your surround channels and overhead, if it thinks that's the best way to do this. So since the actual encode on the disc was actual Atmos using objects, and you have a Dolby Atmos decoder but only 2 overhead speakers, it's going to put those overhead objects only into those 2 overhead speakers. It's not going to move them down into your 5 bed layer when you're doing it in Atmos. But when you're letting it be an up mixer, the DTS Neural X up mixer is just going to be like, well, the sound is just supposed to be moving around, so I'm going to use that 5.1 bed layer in addition to the 2 overhead speakers that I have, and you're actually going to get more circling panning. So interestingly, the up mixed version of it sounded better to you, and it actually kind of makes sense. But now here's where I'm going to double back to the Xbox One itself. This was a disc. And originally you said, okay, output the bitstream output, and that is normally what we would do, because then whatever is on the disc is coming out of the Xbox One. When you go into the Xbox One's audio settings and say output everything as DTS, well, now even something that was encoded in Dolby Digital 5.1 is going to be decoded inside of the Xbox into PCM and then re-encoded into regular DTS and output that way. So there's a whole thing going on inside of the Xbox One that we don't normally do with discs. Normally with discs,
We got to
just
make
have
sure
it
too
output.
that because there's multiple places that you can change.
Yes.
Do output settings in the Xbox
Yeah,
One.
unfortunately,
So
this is way more complex.
By going to the Xbox One settings
Yeah.
and saying sound output being bit stream.
Yeah.
Well, that's just for like the games and in streaming and everything else.
Yeah.
Discs have their own individual setting. So
Within
you
the
got,
Blu-ray player app of the Xbox,
Right.
there is an additional separate audio setting that is only for discs. Right.
yeah, so you got to make sure that you're changing it in the right place as well.
Yeah. So I mean, to
don't
try
know.
and simplify this, to try and bring this back to okay, what was originally on the disc was actual Atmos, and if you set the Xbox One to output bitstream and the front of your AV receiver set Atmos, then we can be reasonably sure that you were hearing what was actually on the disc. But
Right.
you were using an AV receiver that only has 2 overhead speakers, so that explains why objects that are overhead, in your case, were only moving left to right and not front to back, because you have a receiver that doesn't do 4 overhead speakers. So that's that part of it.
It still should go front to back.
It doesn't,
I
though.
mean, it's not that hard.
It just says these objects are supposed to be overhead, and I only have 2 overhead speakers to work with, and that's what it does. That is the way it works when it's a true decode. So, I mean, going back to his original question when Lee was here, he was like, is this something inherent between Atmos versus DTS? And no, Andrew, that is not the case. It's not that DTS sounds better. We can't go to that level of generalization. You've got this interesting situation where, like, let's say instead you had a DTS X demo disc, right? And if you did that and told your Xbox One to output the bit stream, the DTS X decoder in your Denon receiver would activate, and all of a sudden, you would have only left to right panning overhead for objects that have been placed overhead. And then, if you now told your Xbox One to output everything as Dolby Digital, the Xbox would decode the DTS X into PCM, re-encode it as Dolby Digital. Your AV receiver would use the Dolby Surround Up mixer on it now, and you might get some all-around panning because it's no longer the original codec on the disc being matched to the decoder inside the player. So, yeah, clear as mud, right? But it's basically, interestingly, if you're actually matching the original codec to the proper decoder, but the AV receiver that you're using only has 2 overhead speakers, you're limited to the things being placed in there, whereas using the up mixer can just make its best guess and suddenly things are going all around you. Yeah.
Carlton, CE Pro posted a sponsored article about 4K projection in ultra-wide formats.
Here we go.
It was sponsored by Panamorph, so not surprisingly, it claims that an anamorphic lens is vital, and that you are wasting pixels if you allow black bars on a 16:9 screen, or just zoom in the projector to fill a cinemascope aspect ratio screen. But the bit that caught Carlton's attention was a claim that 2.35 to 1 screen isn't really ideal, and that a 2.4 to 1 screen is the better choice because that's actually the correct aspect ratio of most modern movies. So when Carlton builds his dedicated home theater, should he get a 2.4 to 1 screen?
No, get a big 16:9 screen, Carlton. There's the short answer.
Yes. That's the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what you see in the theaters and what is in the theaters, what they are giving you in the theaters. First of all, they have black bars, but anyways, what they have in the theaters, because they just have a big screen up there. There's not a lot of masking going on.
Not anymore. Not these days.
Yeah. So that what you see in the theaters and that movie was originally, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's on the disc. So if the disc was mastered and it says 2.35 to 1, guess what? It's 2.35 to 1 on that disc. It's not 2.4 to 1, but because that was what the movie. Yes, something is lost, and you can't get it back. Don't worry about it. So just that's to start with. But yes, the answer is, and regardless of what Rob's going to tell you about masking, and you go back and listen to that other question, it is a big 16:9.
Yep.
You have black bars on the top and bottom, and when somebody decides to put
Subtitles
subtitles in there, you can see them.
Yep.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I full agreement. Get a big 16 by 9 screen. Get the width that you want, and then just keep it 16 by 9. But there are a plethora of aspect ratios. I mean, there are 2.37 to 1. There are 2.32 to 1. I mean, there isn't really a set standard, and if you
isn't the IMAX one actually, if you have a 16 by 9 screen, the official IMAX, doesn't it cut in a little bit on the sides because it's not 16 by 9? It's a little bit.
Well, I mean, true.
It's a little bit taller.
Yeah, true.
Right?
IMAX in an IMAX theater is like 1 point. I don't know what it is, but I mean the full film IMAX is like 1.4 or something to 1. It's almost it's closer to the old 4:3 ratio, and then I mean 1.85 to 1 is really common. Right, so if you're trying to get down to, I want a screen that matches pixel for pixel. Well, from movie to movie, it's going to change. There are, and we also have the whole conversion from the DCI, which was using a 17 by 9 aspect ratio, not 16 by 9, because it's the 2048 by 1080p or 4096 by 2160. That's the cinema one. Then they had to convert that into a 16 by 9 aspect ratio on the disc. I mean, things change, and from movie to movie, the aspect ratio changes. So,
and in some movies, scene to scene.
Yes,
remember, Dark Knight.
That's right.
Dark Knight has IMAX scenes
or Dunkirk,
in there,
right? Yeah.
So, which are not the same. So.
And again, if you're watching Dunkirk, do you want all of the top and bottom cut off because you bought a 2.4 to 1 screen?
Yeah.
So that's very simple answer. Get a 16 by 9 screen.
John, the HDMI output on John's Denon X4000 died. So he's looking to get a replacement. Does he need to stay in the 4000 series with Denon for a comparable current model, or would the 3500H be comparable to what he had with the 4000 these days? His room is 10.5 by 13. He's running a 5.1 setup at the moment with a SNCE speaker, SE speakers, and an SVS sub. He isn't really planning to expand beyond that. He has a ceiling fan, so he doesn't think he'll ever install Atmos speakers on or in his ceiling. A 4K display is upgrade is a possibility. So what receiver would we recommend to him? You're fine going with the 3500.
If you only need 5.1 completely, you are absolutely fine with the 3500.
I think below 35, the 3000 series, you get the lower Audyssey.
It downgrades
right?
the Audyssey. That's right.
Yeah.
The 3500 has XT32, and if you went down to the 2500, say, it would be XT, not XT32.
Yeah. Now, if you don't care that much about that, you're perfectly fine to go down to the 2000 as well.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, it would make a difference. For me, that would be the thing that would decide what receiver model I would get. But the number of speakers that you have and what you're trying to do, man, you could pretty much get any old receiver you want to get.
Given that the 3500 is like $500 at accessories for less right now, if you want to keep it...
Yeah, but if he could spend $300 on one, he could do that as well and still have all his speakers powered and be able to pass through Dolby Vision and all the other stuff. So,
but your X4000 did have XT32, so if you want to keep that, the 3500 will do it. So the X4000 had 7 amplifiers built in and could process 9 speakers, but it didn't do Atmos. It didn't do DTSX. That was the Audyssey DSX or DTS Neo X, where you could add on the X4000 either. So you could have surround backs, front wides, front heights, pick 2 of those pairs, because you couldn't do 11 speakers with the X4000. You could do 9, right? So, but you're sticking with 5.1. So all of that is moot. Even surround backs are moot in your case. So the X3500 will definitely do you.
All right, Jay. Jay says this is mostly a hypothetical question, but what if you find 1,000 nits too bright? Is there a way without a professional coming in for an owner to calibrate their TV to top out at a precise lower nit level? Also, if you have a Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player with their HDR optimizer, could you then pick, say, the 500 nit output level and retain all of the image detail while limiting the peak nit level to a more desirable level? All of these displays have a backlight.
That's
so
right.
You have the ability of adjusting that. If now remember the 1,000 nits. You're not getting a full screen 1,000 nits.
No, little teeny,
that's never happening.
Highlights.
Yeah. So first things first, you should set it up properly and see how you actually feel about it before you start worrying about whether or not you're going to burn your retinas, because I don't think that's going to be the case. But If it were the case that you find that your display is too bright, every single display has a backlight.
And
especially
when they go into HDR mode, they all peg the backlight at the maximum setting, and you can lower it. So that you can lower it. Now, he's saying to get to a precise nit level, you would need some way of measuring.
Yeah, there's not going to be like...
Yeah.
You know,
it's not like you
we're
can...
at 1,000 nits, we're going to lower it down to 500. That's not the way it's going to be. It's going to be a scale from 1 to 10, and you're going to be able to... or something like that.
Yeah, it's not as though the backlight
somewhere.
control, if you put it at 50 instead of 100, it's going to be exactly at 500 nits now, because it's a curve on that backlight thing and not a...
And retaining
linear.
all the detail, all the, once you start lowering that backlight, I mean, you are risking suffering some detail loss,
right?
And contrast loss, because you don't have the same amount of range that you had before. So something has to give, and it's going to probably crush the blacks more.
Right.
The first thing it's going to do is crush the blacks.
The interesting thing here is put all of that aside, because he touched upon the Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray players with their HDR optimizer, and if you tell them re-tone map everything to the 500 nit setting, which is one of the options, that's the brightest it ever gets now. So leave the TV alone, and what's coming out of the player never goes brighter than 500 nits now, and you're done. Of course, that only works for physical discs, right? For streaming services and stuff, it's not going to work, because they're a separate source. So that would be how to go with that. But Tom is absolutely right in that I wouldn't even worry about this, because... The 1,000 nits being
he did say
bright.
it was hypothetical.
Yeah, he does say it's hypothetical. Yep. So all fair enough. But I'm just saying Tom is right that definitely look at it first, because it's not a concern. Yeah.
All right. John on Twitter. John says he gets a weird pressure feeling in his ears if he uses in-ear monitors. He settled on using AirPods with their open design, which Rob was making fun of on Twitter in real life. And on this podcast, he pretty much makes fun of them every chance he gets.
I do not like them.
I want to thank everybody who has AirPods for sharing their music with the world. I don't know if you can hear it, but we can definitely hear it.
Yep. No, that's what I always say. There is just as much sound coming out as what is being farted into your ears by them. That's what I say about them.
But is there anything other than open back earphones that would eliminate that uncomfortable feeling for him with sealed in-ear monitors? I mean, sealed on ear or over ear monitors, cans can be. I mean, I don't know exactly what he's experiencing, so it's very hard to say. But if the problem is he doesn't like having things shoved in his ears, which I can completely understand, and he feels like there's a weird pressure. I mean, the tips that you're using with your earbuds could also make a huge difference. So, I mean, are you using those little foam ones that they give you that are supposed to be like completely noise isolating? So you shove the whole thing in there and it like expands? Because those give me a weird feeling too. Is it a normal kind of a silicone tip that you place in there? And
very often the included silicone tips are too big for a lot of people's ear canals, and that can easily cause pain, quite literally, because you're
headaches and
you're sticking something that's literally too big for your ear canal into your ear. I did want to mention though, I mean, I can actually kind of demonstrate it on the video because I'm wearing in-ear monitors, and how you insert them is important, because if you just take it, a regular in-ear monitor and you just shove it in your ear like that, it's going to feel like you just put an earplug in, and it doesn't even sound correct. When you're inserting an in-ear monitor, you want to make sure you tug on your ear.
Yeah,
open
up the ear canal.
And I actually pull on the bottom earlobe too. Open up the ear canal and put it in, and that, I mean, you're basically allowing the air to escape around as you're inserting it, as opposed to just shoving it in there. So part of it could be how you place it into your ear, and it's very important that you do that little ear tug to get a proper seal and to allow that air out. Also, if you just wear them long enough, you do tend to kind of get used to them. Nobody is used to having something in their ear canal right away. So I wear ear monitors pretty much every day, so I'm just used to them. I quite literally forget I'm wearing it sometimes at this point because I'm just so used to it. But there are multiple things here that could be at play. Ear tips too large, in how you insert them, those type of things.
I do the same thing, but I pull down. I just pull down like at an angle.
Yep.
Just above my earlobe and pull kind of towards the back of my head to get it to open up. Tom K. It's not me. Different Tom. Tom has an LG B6 OLED. His receiver is a Sony DH820 that is old enough that it doesn't do Atmos or DTS:X, and it can't pass through 4K or HDR. And he has an LG UP870 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, which only has a single HDMI output and can only do HDR10.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
So to keep HDR video capability, he plugs the player directly into his OLED. Then he has to use the optical audio outlet to get surround sound to a Sony receiver. But then he only recently read about how optical audio can support the very best audio quality from Blu-ray and Ultra HD Blu-ray. So could he use the ARC, or the audio return channel, from his OLED back to his receiver to get the best audio quality from his Ultra HD Blu-ray player? No.
Nope.
If your TV, if your receiver is too old to accept all these things that you're saying it will not take the enhanced audio return channel, which is basically brand new.
And the
which will
B6
allow you to,
OLED doesn't have the EARC enhanced audio return channel either.
Yeah.
So
if you had a new TV with the enhanced audio return channel and a new receiver with that could accept the enhanced audio return channel, you would need neither.
Well, in that case, the answer would be yes. You could plug the player into the TV,
or you could just plug the player into,
or you could just plug the player directly into the receiver. That's right. Yeah. So no, unfortunately, the original audio return channel, which is what you have, has the same limitations as an optical audio output. It can handle vanilla Dolby Digital 5.1, vanilla DTS 5.1, 2 channels of PCM, or in some cases, Dolby Digital Plus. Not all cases. Your B6 OLED can output Dolby Digital Plus from its optical or ARC output, but your AV receiver cannot accept it. So, that's not a solution. ARC from your OLED back to your receiver won't get you anything better than what you already have with your optical connection.
So he asked, should he get a new player, one that has 2 HDMI outputs? And as a bonus, he could get a player that supports Dolby Vision. How much of a difference is there between HDR10 and Dolby Vision anyways? I'm going to read the next one so that we can answer them both at the same time because it makes more sense.
Okay.
So his last question is, should he get a new receiver? He's quite happy with his current 5.1 setup. So if he wants to get Dolby Vision and everything else, he has to get a new player.
That's right.
There's no other way around it.
That's right.
But if you're going to go through the trouble of getting a new player, and I mean he's got 5.1, you could get a new player, a newer player that can support all those things and has 2 HDMI outputs, which would be fine because you only need 5.1.
Yeah, because his receiver can do Dolby True HD, it can do DTS HD master audio, so that's fine. That's the best you can get with a 5.1 setup anyway. The best you can get is True HD or DTS HD master audio.
Would it be worth it to get the a new receiver as well? Because the player is if he wants to get the best picture, that's not optional.
If he got the new receiver, he could plug his current Ultra HD Blu-ray player into the receiver. It would pass through the 4K and HDR10 video. You would just never have Dolby Vision, right? Because if you're keeping the same player. If you keep the same receiver but get a new player that has Dolby Vision and 2 HDMI outputs, you could essentially get the best of everything you're capable of doing with a 5.1 audio system. So cost-effective wise, getting just the new player would kind of make sense if Dolby Vision is a big deal to you, but that's why he's asking, is there a big difference between HDR10 and Dolby Vision? Now, you have a B6 OLED, which did not do the dynamic tone mapping on HDR10. So there is a visible difference. There tends to be, so if you had them side by side with a disc that has Dolby Vision and then you played it on one TV in HDR10 mode and a TV right beside it in Dolby Vision mode, you would probably notice some little spots where there is more highlight detail in the Dolby Vision mode because it is retaining all of that. That's what Dolby Vision does, is retains all the detail. Whereas the HDR10 version on your B6 OLED that does not dynamically tone map HDR10 might clip off some of that highlight detail or just kind of blow it out. You know, there should be a little bit of detail in these clouds, and instead they're just uniform white. So there can be, but if it's not side by side, I mean, what happens? Probably not going to know this. Yeah, what happens is that there's detail that theoretically could be there, but you never see it. But how would you know? Because you never see it, right? It's that little bit
And
of
you
a paradox.
really don't have to get the world's best receiver either, because he's not mentioning anything other than how things look,
Right.
And getting true HD or whatever it is. So he doesn't seem to be concerned about room correction. So if you're not worried about room correction, basically any receiver from Accessories for Less at this point, Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, pick one. They're all going to pass through 4K.
Oh yeah. Any
need.
modern receiver will pass through HDR10 without any problem. And
so now you could say, I'm going to buy a new receiver. That way I know I'm getting the best sound. All I have to do is switch the HDMI cable or whatever, and throw away the optical one, and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And see how you feel about the picture then. Then you could say, okay, well, Father's Day is 6 months away. That's when I'll get my new Blu-ray player.
Right. So the difference between Dolby Vision and HDR10 is pretty subtle. And if you don't have them side by side, you're not going to notice that there's some highlight detail missing. So that's the one way to look at that. I think I forgot to put a question on. It might not have been Tom K, because somebody else might have asked this similar question, but somebody asked, I might as well throw it in here. If you have a 5.1 setup and the disc has Atmos or DTS-X, how does it handle that? Well, any disc that has Atmos or DTS-X, there is like a core to that, which is Dolby True HD or DTS HD Master Audio. Yeah. So there's no problem there. Your 5.1 setup will still play the True HD or DTS HD Master Audio core.
Right. It just basically, it doesn't really even do this, but it basically collapses. Because if you think about it, the core 5.1 or 7.1 setup
has all the sound in it.
Right. Yeah. So and then they just put flags.
That's right.
Or
metadata.
The metadata is just flags that say, okay, this sound that was here, move it here.
That's right. If you're able to move it here, and in your case, your receiver says, well, I can't do it, so I just play it the way it is. So you don't lose any sound. That's not a concern.
Not losing anything.
Right. Yeah. I think we've covered that.
All right. So Mark says he listened with interest when we went through our recommended video output settings for the Apple TV 4K. In particular, he agreed with our suggestion to set the Apple TV 4K output to YUV 420 instead of 444.
Yeah.
And RGB for video content, since all of today's video content is 420 anyway. And using that setting reduces the amount of bandwidth being set over HDMI, which is true. But what if you're using the Apple TV 4K to display photos? Would it be beneficial to use any different output settings for photos and home videos and slideshows versus streaming video sources? So the 444 versus 420. The way to think about this is, those are basically the three colors, or the chrominance, luminance, and whatever it is that you're sending out, right? So 444 is full data for the first one, full data for the second one, full data for the third one. It tells you everything.
That's right.
What the 420 is, full data for the first one,
which is the black and white. So full data for the black and white.
The two, it basically sends out, hey, this is what's different, or this is what you subtract, or whatever from that first one. And the 0 is everything left over goes here.
Yeah, the way you can think of it in a YCBCR or YUV signal is there's the black and white signal, and that doesn't get touched. And then they call it the color difference channels, because it's a way of sort of data compressing the color information. So let's say you have a 4K image. If you have a 4K image that's been encoded as YCBCR 420, you have a 4K black and white and a 1080p color image that you can basically think of it that way. That's essentially what's going on. Whereas if it's 444, you have both a 4K black and white image and a 4K color image going along with it, which obviously means you have to send more data along that HDMI cable. So when you're talking about photos, a lot of times, photographers are worried because of the differences within the colors in the images. Can sometimes be lost when you start doing this more compressed data. Yeah. If you have like a fine pattern, like a colored pattern on a shirt or a rug or something, whatever, some of that fidelity can be lost if you compress the color channels in 420. So, here's the thing. I mentioned doing the 420 output setting because in quite a few instances, people have hooked up their Apple TV 4K. They've just done the automatic video settings, which unfortunately means everything is coming out at 4K HDR, 60 frames a second all the time, which isn't even really what you want. That's not what the content was encoded as. So my suggestion is to set the Apple TV 4K to kind of like the lowest common denominator, and then activating its match dynamic range and match frame rate options so that it only goes up when it needs to and stays at the original content level at all other times. It's kind of a backwards way of thinking of it. Most other devices, you set it for the maximum and it steps down if the content says to, but the Apple TV 4K kind of works in reverse. You start with the lowest and it'll move up if you've told it to match the content. But you have a point that if you're looking at, high resolution photos with colored patterns and stuff, you don't necessarily want to compress any of that color data. And as long as your HDMI cables and your display handles the 4:4 signal without a problem, then you can leave it there. It is okay.
Yeah, but I think most of these photos that these guys that people are talking about displaying came off a phone anyways. So
probably. I mean, yeah.
I am unsure that this is really super necessary. I mean, if you've got this 50 megapixel image or whatever, I don't think you're streaming that to a slideshow.
The very simple answer, of course, is to just try it.
Yeah.
So, he mentioned what trajectory has, and it is capable of accepting a full fat HDMI 2.0 signal, the full 18 gigabits. So as long as your HDMI cable is up to the task, leaving your Apple TV 4K to output 444 is fine. That's not a problem. It's come up because sometimes people have said, my Apple TV 4K started blanking out. Like, why is it doing that? I'm like, it's probably the HDMI cable. And luckily, you can set it to 420, and it often works. So that's all that is.
All right, Michael. Michael recently got a 50-inch TCL S425 series 4K TV. Michael is visually impaired, so having perfect picture settings isn't super important for his own personal enjoyment, but he would like his friends to be impressed by the picture, and using it straight out of the box, his wife thinks it's just all right. So what suggestions do we have for getting the best picture performance out of it? I mean, usually it's just put it to cinema mode and whatever.
I mean,
but I'm sure
that's almost it. I'm going to have a link at avrant.com and in the show notes for ratings, RTings, because they have settings for this exact model of TV. And if you just want to follow along with their recommended picture settings, it'll get you there. So that's an easy suggestion. But in short, the most important one is to go into the power settings and deactivate the power saving / eco setting, because by default it's on. So you said you took it straight out of the box and weren't super impressed. Not surprising, because that eco setting, the power saving setting, completely robs you of all the brightness and contrast that the TV is capable of. It's a horrible thing, but they did it to get the power, the Energy Star rating. So that is,
right.
I mean, that's probably 90% of it right
Thanks,
there.
California.
Yeah.
You ruin it for everybody.
You turn off the eco setting, and that's probably going to take care of 90% of your wife's, not being impressed by this TV part of it. The second one, very simply, is put it in movie mode. Not super complicated. You put it in movie mode and you're like 90% done. If you want to follow the rest of the setting suggestions, they're there. I will mention, though, on those TCLs, you can't get to all of the picture settings on the TV itself. You actually have to use the Roku app to get to all the settings. So one of the suggestions they have is that this isn't the brightest TV in the world, and if you want HDR to actually look a little bit brighter, they suggest changing the gamma setting. That's optional. If you want to do that, you can only do that in the app, which RTings tells you about. So if you follow their suggestions, you'll be just fine.
So it's an LCD TV, but is there any worry at all about burn-in? The TV is often on for about 12 hours a day, and sometimes it's displaying static images like title tracks from music sources. So is there even an outside chance that he has anything to worry about?
No.
I mean, any TV can be abused to the point where you mess it up.
I suppose.
I would be. I mean, I would, if you take that as a challenge.
Yeah,
I guess, prove us wrong. Come at me, bro. But I don't think so.
This is a VA LCD panel, which is essentially immune to any image retention or burn-in. Yeah.
Here it comes, dude. the internet's going to flood your Twitter with all sorts of burn-in.
I really don't
LCD
think so.
images.
You're exceedingly you're as safe as you can be with any display.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like it. Alfredo says he's a new listener. He's quickly burned through 8 episodes in just a couple of days, which means he didn't sleep for a couple of days. His room is 10 feet by 13 by 9, and the seating area is right up against the back wall. He's using ELAC Unify speakers up front with an RSL Speedwoofer 10S subwoofer and a monoprice Amber, folded ribbon tweaver, in-wall and in-ceiling speakers in a 5.1.2 configuration with top middles that are about a foot in front of his seats. Okay. So this looks like an enclosed room. He is right up against the back wall, and the in-wall speakers are like as close to the corner as you can get, and not.
Yeah, they're on the side walls, and if you were sitting in the rightmost seat on the sort of lounge part of this L-shaped couch that he's set up there, that is right in your right ear. It's right there in your right ear.
Right there.
And he's got a pair of top middle speakers that are, they're essentially directly over his seats. I guess if you're
I wouldn't call them a foot in front of. I would call them directly above.
If you're leaning back, I guess, right? Like resting your head against the back wall, or what would seem to be a picture shelf is where the back of your head might knock into. I guess they're a teensy bit in front of you, but they're more or less directly overhead.
So he's got sort of a cubby that his TV goes in. There's a cubby. There's a shelf that his center channel is in with a grill built into the shelf. Yeah. And his subwoofer is below the right speaker. It's shoved inside of a bookshelf.
Yep.
His speakers are also on bookshelves. Look like they're a little bit pushed back as well. So we'll address all that.
They're pretty close to the front, though. So
why are there two? It looks like 2 speakers above his head. One's a light and one's a speaker on best.
He's got little pot lights beside his top middle speakers. So no, he's only got one pair of in-ceiling speakers, pretty much directly above him.
So he upgraded to an Onkyo R. First of all, by the way, without ever having listened to us, and you still got pretty good gear. So I think you're doing well there. So I don't see any gear that I think I would want to change. So you're doing fine there. So he's upgraded to an Onkyo RZ830 receiver, which will let him expand to 5.2.4. Should he attempt to move his existing top middle speakers, they can't really be behind the seats, but should he move the existing in-ceiling speakers as close to the back wall as possible so they can have top fronts and top rears? You can't have top rears. You've lost your mind.
No, keep them as top middles. They are fine where they are and fine being called. Yes, you're going to have front heights, which, you know what, put them about 5 feet in front of your seats, firing straight down, and you still just call them front heights inside of your RZ830.
Move those plants off the top shelf and put them up there. Almost. Okay. Yeah. He debated with himself over getting the RSL sub or SVS PB1000. No way that PB1000 was fitting in that.
Exactly.
The RSL was $100 less, and it fit perfectly into the bottom shelf space in the front right corner of his setup. Output-wise, he feels he has more than enough bass, but do we think he should get a second sub? Do we think he should replace his RSL with the SVS? He just wants to have the best space possible for his price range and his available space. Where the heck are you going to put it? His couch, you guys got to understand, his couch quite literally goes from one wall to the other.
Yeah.
On the back wall.
It looks like if you see that front facing, the door for this room is a little over to the left, so this must be slightly L-shaped. Right?
Yeah, just slightly,
because just beside the left side of his couch, there is an actual wall right there. So this must be a slightly L-shaped room. There's no rear left corner space to put a sub as a diagonally opposite
if you
corner.
are dedicated, if you want to get another sub, I would be perfectly okay with you getting an RSL. To match this one.
Yeah.
This is this is
fine
a
small room.
This is what you need to do. You need to take that couch, move it out enough to get the sub behind the back left corner.
I really want you to. We're talking what, 1.5 feet? That's all you need?
18 inches.
Here's if this is an aesthetics thing, if someone is saying, I don't want the look of the couch pulled away from the wall, you already have this shelf for pictures behind them. And those not very deep tables that stand behind a couch?
Yeah.
Get one of those. It's totally going to look like it fits. Like, nobody's going to walk in and you have a picture shelf and then you have one of those thin tables that's meant to go behind a couch, behind your couch. Nobody's going to go in and go, what did you do here? why is your room set up like, I mean, it's going to totally look normal from a decorating standpoint of view. And then
it's not really going to affect your side speakers or
No.
your overheads. So
that's
not
what
as
I
far as
really
they're-
want you to do. And
Yeah.
and then you could put a second RSL, because you don't need to upgrade to an SVS in here. You can get the second RSL and put it in your
Just
rear
another
left corner.
PB1000. Jesus, you'd have to sit
Yeah,
on it.
where would you put it?
Yeah, I would move the couch out, put the second sub behind the left corner right there, and then along that back wall below that shelf, I would get some white acoustic panels and just hang them directly below that shelf
Done and done.
on that back wall. Yeah. Infinite Gary. Polk recently introduced their new Legend series speakers to replace their LSI series. It's still using a ring radiator tweeter with prices ranging from $1,200 a pair to $6,000 a pair. At the top of the line is the Legend L800 Tower, which reintroduces Polk SDA, Stereo Dimensional Array. They market it as the only true stereo speaker because
I do like that.
it is a stereo speaker by itself. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, that's not even it. No, you still need two of them.
There are two tweeters and two mid-range drivers, which is stereo, and one set angled inward at 15 degrees and the other angled outward at 15 degrees. The inward-facing drivers act like a normal tweeter and mid-range that have been towed in towards the listener. The outward-facing drivers play a cancellation signal that is meant to eliminate interaural crosstalk. How do they know what my room looks like, dude? How do they know where that thing's going to bounce in my room? But whatever. In other words, your left ear only hears the left speaker, and your right ear only hears the right speaker. Gene from Audioholic says he was extremely impressed and surprised by their performance when he heard them demonstrated. So what do we think? If SDA can deliver imaging that's better than any traditional speaker, why isn't anybody else doing it or something similar? That right there answers your own question. Or alternatively, if good traditional speakers are still able to image well, is SDA just a gimmick, or are other speakers just a high performance build and set design? What?
I don't know. Those were his exact words, and I just threw them in there because
I have no idea what that means.
quite sure
Okay,
yet.
so let's skip that part. Yeah. So what you're talking about here is trying to do some sort of weird cancellation in order to make sure that you're getting this direct sound only into one ear and it doesn't cross talk into the other, so that you're not hearing it from both ears. That way you get this perfect imaging, which is what we hear and what we talk about when we talk about electrostatic speakers. Electrostatic speakers, they're so directional that when you point them, you tow them in towards you, your right ear is getting just the right speaker pretty much, with very little of the left speaker
exceedingly
in there.
little. Yep.
Yeah, the left speaker is going into your left ear with exceedingly little of what's going into your right ear. So does this work? Well, it can.
Yep.
Obviously.
Oh, you can get some
Absolutely.
crazy imaging if you can do it. If your left ear only hears the left speaker and your right ear only hears the right speaker.
You know what else does it really well? Headphones.
And I wanted to get to that because the irony of there are like high-end headphone amplifiers that do what? Oh, they introduce some interaural crosstalk so that it sounds more outside of your head instead of that headphone effect of the sound being like right in the middle of your brain, right? So hilariously, you've got these high-end headphone amplifiers introducing interaural crosstalk so that you don't have the left ear only hearing the left headphone. Yeah. So, I mean, Gene said he was impressed. Okay, that was their controlled demo in their room with their room dimensions.
And this is why, let's go back to Tannoy real quick. This is why the Tannoy demo was so annoying, because it's like you guys had all the control in this room.
Right.
You had every bit of control, and I walked out of here wanting to shoot myself because my head was pounding by the time I left. Yes, if you can't put me in a room that you set up with your speakers and completely controlled the entire environment as much as you can at something like Cedia, well then, and I don't walk out impressed. Well, then you should fire all those people, and maybe your speakers suck. But they're not in your room. You know, they're not even close to in your room.
And I mean,
you don't know what they're going to do.
Similar to electrostatic speakers or magnaplanar speakers, something like that. They are picky about placement. They are not speakers that you can just position willy-nilly and fire straight out, and they're going to always work. And I'm sure there are instructions that come with these SDA speakers. Now, SDA is something that was around in the, I think, late 70s, certainly early 80s. Went away for a good 25, 30 years. They kind of brought it back. Nobody uses anything like this in a mastering studio. Right. In a mastering studio, even though you're sitting very close to your mastering monitor speakers, and you probably have a pretty heavily treated studio that you're listening in, you still get some interaural crosstalk. It's there. That's how they mastered it. So, I mean, can these do something imaging-wise akin to electrostatic speakers? I don't see any reason why not. That could certainly be the case.
There's absolutely no guarantee that it's going to happen in your room.
Can that be a really cool and impressive demo? It sure as well can. Both Tom and I have heard electrostatic speakers who were like, well, that imaging is something my regular traditional speakers just can't do. That can be the case.
As long as you don't mind sitting in one seat with your head in the vise, it's amazing. I just rather put on headphones. Right. So Trinnov's altitude processors still seem to be in a class of their own, being capable of a full 24.1.10 Atmos configuration if you want to go nuts. But let's say 11, 13, or 15 speakers is enough for a smaller room. Mm-hmm. It's more than enough, but let's go on. Do the Trinnov processors offer anything that makes them superior to, say, Denon or Anthem, other than their ability to use more speakers than any other brand? I mean, it's their room correction. They're they have with the 3 microphone thingy. Is that them, or is that
it's a
Yamaha?
Tetrahedral microphone, so it's actually 4 microphones, so a triangle at the bottom and 1 on top. They have a tetrahedral microphone, and Trinnov can do something that basically nobody else can do, which is genuine phantom speaker placement almost anywhere in the room, given that you're starting with enough speakers to begin with, because obviously you can't just like literally create sounds out of nowhere. So, I mean, the irony is they talk about how, let's say you're in a room and you can't ideally position your side surround left speaker. There's a column there, whatever it is. But you have speakers that are behind that position, in front of that position, above that position, all that stuff. And Trinnov can do this a pretty amazing thing where, because we don't stereo image very well anywhere but in front of us, but they can create a pretty darn convincing phantom speaker in the exact location. But I'm like, if you can afford a $30,000 Trinnov processor, you're telling me you can't also put your speaker where it should be? We've seen those crazy, all glass rooms, and people want to do crazy stuff in there. So
this doesn't fix all glass rooms. So
it still doesn't fix that.
It can't do that. But it doesn't fix all.
But
that.
It can do this crazy phantom speaker thing that nobody else really can do.
Well, and I would expect it to. Well, to begin with, for $30,000, I should be able to put the speaker wherever the heck I want to put it, and it should be able to power it and then make a good phantom, whatever. But that's sort of what you're giving up. What you're giving up when you are paying $500 for a receiver from Accessories for Less is the ability to place your speaker wherever the heck you want, as many as you want,
right?
And have the processing power within the device to do all this. Trinnov is a computer. You are buying
absolutely. You look at the back of it. That is a PC back. That's what it is. It's got a printer port on it.
It is just in case.
That's right.
You never know. That big long. Remember those big long printer?
Oh, I sure do.
Connections. So this is what you're paying for. You're paying, but why would you want to have this in a smaller room? Because you have an excess of money not nearly.
If he's asking more like, okay, no matter what, I'm setting up a 7.2.4 configuration. If I get the Trinnov, is it going to sound way better than a Denon? No,
it's not. Not if you're going to put them in the right place or anywhere near the right place.
And configure and set everything up properly.
Yeah. Chris says, thanks for confirming that the Denon X1500H is the right receiver for his bedroom setup, where he is literally inches away from his front speakers right beside his bed. Just a few more things he'd like to confirm. He'd like to upgrade his Mica speakers at some point in the not-too-distant future. He's got Empyrean, Ascend, and RBH on his short list. The X1500H will be fine with any of those, right? Dude,
yes.
You could literally, you could get, really hard to drive speakers. And they would be fine because they're not very far from your face. So that's fine. They'll be fine.
Yes.
So while his front speakers are extremely close, his surround speakers are almost 9 feet away. Does that require anything more than the X1500H can easily handle? Well, since they're not your main speaker, your front left and right speakers or your center channel, they're not getting nearly as much information, nor are they usually asked to play nearly as loud. I would not worry.
It's also still only 9 feet. That's not a long distance.
But based on what I just said, of like you could get any speaker you want. See. In this case, you would not want to get like magnaplanar
electrostatics. I don't think that's in the cards anyway.
You could put electrostatic speakers up, the ones that are inches from your face.
Right.
Those are fine. The ones that are 9 feet away, you would not want to do.
But
that.
Anything from Aperion, Ascend, or RBH 9 feet away, zero problem.
So reading through the instructions for running Audyssey Multi-Q XT, it seems as though taking 3 microphone measurements is the minimum. Chris is under the impression that each microphone measurement is supposed to be taken in a different seating position, but he only has one listening position. So can he stop the Audyssey setup process at just one measurement? Should he take the 3 measurements but just keep the mic in the same spot for all 3? You should move it within like a 2-foot radius of the first spot.
I mean, in his case, it could probably be a 1-foot radius,
Yeah.
You could keep it quite close, but it is
They
not.
say 3 different seating locations. It is not 3 different chairs in your home theater.
Correct.
It is all around the same spot.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed
to be.
And
I don't blame you for thinking that, because that's what all the diagrams look like. That's what everyone describes it as. It's unfortunate because that is not the case. It is not about seating locations. It is about position number 1. The most important microphone position is position number 1, and it should go, again, not even necessarily where you sit. It should go where the phantom center ought to be based on where your front left and right speakers are positioned. If you sit in your rear left corner, that isn't where you put microphone position number 1. You put it where you look at where your front left and right speakers are. You say, where should the phantom center be? That is microphone position number 1. Now go as much as 2 feet to the left, and then 2 feet to the right, and then 2 feet in front of you, and 2 feet behind that microphone position number 1, and you make yourself a bubble all within a 2-foot radius. And it is not about seating positions. It's about getting a nice average what's happening around that microphone position number 1, so that we don't try to over-equalize things that will end up causing a problem. That's really what it says. Spatial average, this nice bubble. So take at least the 3 measurements. In fact, I would recommend take all 8. You're only going to do it once or twice.
I don't do that. I take about 6 before I get bored and give up. I take 1, 2, 3. I probably take 5 or 6. Maybe I do take all 8. I don't know. All right, this might be the last one. We'll see. Billy uses a Sony VW675ES 4K projector with a 2.35 to 1 screen and anamorphic lens. Okay, I'm sorry about the entire beginning of the
I said it was a theme.
He relies on his Oppo 203 to scale all images so they appear correctly on his ultra-wide screen. Everything looks great, but HDR can vary quite a bit from movie to movie. That's not just you, dude. That's the movies. The Sony projector doesn't have dynamic tone mapping, so some bright details are clipped or blown out sometimes, and that has me interested in getting a Panasonic Ultra HD Blu-ray player for their HDR optimizer, but the UB820 doesn't appear to have the scaling he needs for his anamorphic lens. So is there a player that offers both features, or is there a solution other than getting a very expensive video processor?
So here's the thing. I don't really make use of everything that my Oppo player can do, so I'm not certain, but it does have its HDMI input. And if you send in an external video source into the Oppo, does it let you use its scaling feature, right? Because So
for those of you that are wondering what he's talking about, Oppo has a pass-through feature.
That's
where
right.
It has an input at the back, or let's just pretend that I don't even know where exactly it is.
It is
input at the back and the output in the front, where you can basically use the Oppo player as a video processor, like a standalone video processor. The question that Rob is posing is, I don't use it as such, therefore I'm not really sure. So could you get a new player that has
you get
all
the Panasonic
the tone mapping?
Yeah.
Right. Then plug that into the Oppo.
That's
use the Oppo to do the scaling, the weird scaling thing that you want, and then then send that out.
Yeah, because I mean, I know it'll pass through HDR and Dolby Vision from its HDMI input. Like, you can plug a streaming box into your Oppo, and it'll pass through all of the video just fine. I'm not certain if you can use. I mean, the whole idea is you can use the upscaling for sure. You can use the Oppo's upscaling on a external video source that you plug into the Oppo. That for sure I know it can do. So I'm not sure about the anamorphic scaling. I think you can. So you're saying, would you have to get a Panasonic and an expensive video processor? I'm like, I'm pretty sure you already have the video processor.
Right.
It's your Oppo. So, I mean, as strange as it sounds to plug one Ultra HD player into another Ultra HD player, you're using the Oppo as your scaler. That's what it would be.
Well, it's cheaper than buying a new projector.
It sure would.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
yeah.
but let's pretend that the Oppo doesn't work that way and you can't do it.
Right.
At that point, you are looking at either a projector upgrade or a
video processor.
A video processor.
Or getting a sled for your anamorphic lens so that you can move it in and out of position as needed. Yeah, because I mean, so Panasonic does have the UB9000, which is even higher end, $1,200 and higher end than the 820. But I looked through its menu, I didn't see any mention of anamorphic scaling like what you're talking about that the Oppo offers. So right. I'm pretty sure your best bet, if you really want that HDMI optimizer, which the Oppo doesn't have, is to get the Panasonic and plug the Panasonic into the Oppo.
Definitely rip Oppo, man.
I'm pretty sure that works.
Yeah. All right, Dan.
No, he had one more question there real quick.
Oh, he did? Is there a device we could recommend for reducing dust in his home theater? Yeah, I got this thing called a Swiffer, and I have children. I hand them.
We had someone just talk about that a little while ago, a portable HEPA filter. If you don't want a big thing in your room all the time.
How much noise does that make, though?
Oh, quite a bit. But the whole point is that you're running it when you're not in the room. It's just filtering the air, taking all the dust out, and then it's on casters. You move it out of your theater when it's theater time. And, the dust has essentially already been removed, and then you put it back in there and run it while you're not in there. We had somebody, right? I mean, they're only like $250. So, and he's got a small theater, so it could circulate that air right quick. And should do a darn good job. So head on down to Best Buy or Home Depot and grab yourself a portable HEPA filter.
There you go. Dan, it seems we've sent Dan down a rabbit hole. Dan has the lovely theater with Paradigm Prestige Series speakers all around, 2 rows of seats, but with large columns on either side that restrict the width of the back row, and dual SVS SB16 Ultra subs that are both up front since they physically won't fit anywhere towards the back of the room. Even though both subs are up front, he was happy with the bass performance until he ran a gazillion bass sweeps. So, ignorance is bliss, my friend, and discovered that his very center seat has a bit of a dip in the 50 to 60 hertz range. A bit of a dip.
I never noticed it, but now that I see it,
first
I can't
world problems.
it.
Now I can. None of his other seats have this dip, and no amount of adjusting his dual sub seems to be able to get rid of this in his center seat. Oh well.
Do you actually hear it, Dan? Do you? I mean, you never did.
Walk
before.
Away, Dan.
You never noticed it before.
Dan. Stop it! Stop playing with stuff. Just turn the TV on and enjoy it.
Dear.
So now he's wondering if turning his built-in seating riser into a giant bass trap might help. The riser was actually built by his contractor and is secured to the studs of the side walls and back walls. The front of the riser is a 2x10, but inside it's just 2x4 secured to the side and back walls. So there's a large gap underneath the framing. Dan went to quite a lot of trouble to install sound clips, double drywall, and green glue for the rest of the room, but now he's worrying that the way the riser was constructed might be short-circuiting all of that. Again, have you noticed it?
Right. Yeah.
Because if you haven't, then it's not. So, do we think cutting openings in the riser along the walls, filling the cavity with insulation, and putting grates over the openings will turn his riser into an effective bass trap that will solve his 50 to 60 hertz dip?
Don't do that, Dan.
I don't have a clue, but don't do it.
Don't do that, Dan. No.
So if you really have a 50 to 60 hertz dip in your center seat in this one chair in this entire room, I mean, honestly, dude, I don't even know how to tell you to fix it other than to sit in another seat and ignore it. But you could get a tuned bass trap.
Tuned bass trap, and actually, the real answer is, I don't. Even if you did turn your riser into
no
a bass trap.
guarantee that it's going to absorb any of that.
I still don't think it's actually going to get that low because it's only, I mean, it's not even 10 inches high if the front of it is a 2x10.
2x10,
so
right.
it's slightly less than 10 inches high.
Around, 6 to 8 inches.
I don't think that's even deep enough to get you a 50 hertz bass trap. I mean, a 50 hertz bass trap has to be darn thick. So, so don't do it. I mean, let's be very, very clear. Don't try to turn your current riser into bass trap. Tom is absolutely right. Have you noticed soundproofing issues? Because if you haven't noticed them, they don't exist. I mean, even if you can measure them and a graph says they exist, if you don't hear them, they don't exist.
That's right.
Which might also be the solution for your 50 to 60 hertz dip, because if you don't hear it actively,
what is this dip? I mean, is it between 50 and 60 hertz and it goes down, 20 dB?
I don't know.
All right. Is it like starts at 60 and then ends at 50? I mean, in between, there's one little spike down at like 55 right. that goes down like 5 dB. Walk away and just don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it.
But yes, a tuned bass trap would be
from GIC would be
acoustic solution, although it's pretty darn big to get a 60 hertz tuned bass trap because there's no other way around it.
He can't fit a subwoofer in the back of his room, but he's going to put this massive bass trap in there.
But we could end up back at the solution that we mentioned the last time we talked to Dan, which was instead of 2 SB16 Ultras in this room size that does not need it, you trade them in for 4 SB2000s, and you can put one in each corner because we figured out that could actually fit. So we're still at the same thing there, Dan. That's the end.
So would it make sense to completely redo the riser? Say it together. No.
Again, unless you've been like, oh, this definitely is hurting my soundproofing. It doesn't, I mean, you've been using your theater this whole time and never complained until we started talking to you. So I apologize for that, Dad, that we have opened this whole can of worms for you. But it seems like seeing things on a graph is bothering you more than actually hearing them ever did before all of this.
All right. I don't know what these pictures of. It looks like a blank room. So has he not?
Oh, well, these were the ones just to show the riser. I mean, I didn't put in the pictures of the finished room.
All right, last one for sure this time.
Okay.
Jairus. Jairus says that he's happy to have found other people who share his love of home theater as a hobby. He started with a 4.1 computer speaker setup when he was 16, and then wound up with a Bose Acoustimas system from a big box store before he started scouring the internet and learning so much more. Yes, many of us...
Totally fair, man.
Yeah, many of us started off thinking Bose was the stuff.
The marketing is very effective.
Can't
blame anybody.
Now he and his wife are moving to their first house. He wants to install a system in the family room, which has dimensions 19.5 by 12.5, but it's completely open to the kitchen on one side and open to the back of at the back into the foyer and a small living room, so it's definitely not an enclosed space. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So if you blah, 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 blah. The foyer would be, you walk into the foyer, you go to the right, you're in the living room. Then if you turn to your right, you would be looking at the window facing outside the house. And then in front of you, on the wall in front of you, not where the window is, but as you walked in from the foyer to the left would be an opening to a whole bunch of stuff.
Right. So, I mean, he's coming in the front door into the foyer, turning left into the family room where he wants his
I'm looking at the living room. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he wants it in the family room. And he's actually kind of marked the sort of setup. So the 3 yellow dots as his front speakers and then subs and, well, we'll get into all of that. But yeah, into the foyer, turn left into the family room. Pretty big room, which is also completely open into the kitchen and dining room.
Yeah.
So it's pretty big space overall.
It's a huge L.
Right.
From the kitchen, dining room, and then it goes into the family room, and then back into the foyer.
The family room, back into the foyer, and the living room, and, there's a door to the rest of it.
No, it stops there.
Yeah, there you go.
So he knows in-walls are not our first choice, but that is really the direction he wants to go. He's strongly leaning towards mono-price caliber in-wall and in-ceiling speakers. Would we strongly recommend something else without drastically increasing the price? I have no idea what the price of those things are.
Those are very inexpensive. I think about $70 or $80 a pair type of thing.
So usually for in-walls or in-ceilings, I would go push towards RBH, but I'm pretty sure they're a lot more expensive than that.
The RBHs are definitely more expensive than these. Now, I can get behind at mono price, but I like their Sycamore series quite a bit more than the Caliber series. They are a little bit more expensive, like $100 a pair. But to me, I think it's worth it. They also have higher power handling in the Sycamore series than the Caliber series, and I think you're going to need it because this is not a small room and not a small space. But on top of all that, you're talking about your front speakers being in what sure looks to me to be your external wall. I mean, the way that he's proposed setting it up in his diagram. That your front speakers are on what sure looks like an external wall to me, and you might not be able to install in-wall speakers in an external wall. I mean, sometimes you can, but very often
unless you think of so the yellow ones are supposed to be
those would be the front three because there's three over there.
Well, I understand that, but I mean they're supposed to be in walls because he didn't really specify.
No, he's talking about in walls everywhere.
Oh, and in ceilings above him, are those black ones?
The little black dots would be in ceilings above him. Yeah.
For the Atmos.
I mean, that's fine. The in ceilings above you, that's fine. And I like the Monoprice Sycamore series for the in ceilings. That's fine. The surround speakers, I mean, he's got them essentially behind him because that's where walls are. He doesn't have a right wall the way things are set up. And I'm not super opposed to that. That looks reasonable to me. And in walls there would be fine. But your front wall, what you've set up as your front wall for this, that's an exterior wall, and you might not be able to put in-wall speakers in there. Just you're be sure.
The depth that you have, and again, we've talked about this multiple times, but it bears repeating. Just because you want there to be a speaker there,
right,
and that there's a flat space where it will fit on the wall, does not mean that what's behind there will allow you to do so.
I mean, there's certainly insulation if it's rigid insulation, and a lot of houses these days have rigid insulation in the exterior walls. That could be an issue if there's pipes, wires, ducting.
I mean, the surrounds that I guess your surrounds, which are behind you, those are also like right near an opening. You don't know what's going to be behind there. They usually take. They're not spacing these things out so that you have the most bay space in there. What they're doing they are building it normally. They're like, oh, and here's where the door starts. Okay, well, we went 18 inches from from the wall there, from where it met the exterior wall and the interior wall, and then we needed it just goes 6 more inches. Okay, so we got 6 more inches. You've got it right in the middle. Could be right in the middle of a 2x4 that's going to be going up there. So suddenly you can't have it exactly where you want it to be. So these are. They're moving into their full. It looks like that this might have that there might be still be in the building process.
I don't know.
If that's the case, then you can at least see things while they're open, and make some more informed decisions. But just be aware. I mean, I know that, like you said, you want in walls and ceilings, man. That's between you and the gods you serve. Me, if there's any way that I can convince you not to, then I think you really shouldn't. So for subwoofers, he's thinking DIY. There are plans for a dual 12-inch Dayton sub, so he was thinking of making 2 of those, 4 12-inch drivers total, and putting them into diagonally opposite corners of the family room. Thoughts? I don't care where you put them in that room.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, here the placement thing, because we're dealing with essentially this big L.
Right.
Yeah, the diagonally opposite within the family room is neither here nor there. That's, I mean, in fact, you might, I mean, just... You
need to be open to placing them all the places in that room.
I mean, just eyeballing it might actually be the case that, so he's got one in what would be the front right corner of his family room, which is essentially the halfway point of the full width of the family room and kitchen shared. Right. So having the other sub, like, directly across from that, so it's like in what would be the rear right corner of the family room, that might be the same. But then again, you've still got this other space going into the foyer and living room. So all of it is, as far as placement, who knows. Now, what you're talking about output-wise actually sounds pretty reasonable. You got a heck of a lot of air to try and displace.
I just want to warn you, if you're not like somebody who really finds enjoyment in building things,
sure,
just factor in your time and how much you think you're worth an hour to do these things. Because I spent just the other day, my wife and I were talking about this, and I was talking about that Friday that I spent getting all that shrapnel out of my backyard.
Yeah.
And she said, next time you do this, I said, I'm never doing it again.
Yeah.
She looked at me, she said, what? I said, I'm never doing it again.
I said,
I spent all day doing this, and I could have been doing work. I could have been doing anything other than that. And if you factor in how much I think I'm worth, there is no way I couldn't have paid a couple of guys with a
Yeah.
trailer to come over here and take care of this crap for me. There's just no amount of money that they could have possibly reasonably quoted me that I wouldn't have thought, yeah, that's reasonable, and I will pay you to do this for me not to have to do it. So if you are somebody that loves building things and stuff like that, great. But you need to factor in not only your time, the materials, everything else you could put into it, but how ugly it's going to look compared to something you could buy off a shelf from SVS or something.
Although if you're good at it, it might look better than anything you would
Well,
buy
that's what
at
I'm
that
saying.
price. So.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You factor all those things in. If it's going to look better because you're so great at it and you love doing it, well, then the opportunity cost is zero.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's worth it. If you're like, I read on the forum that these are really easy to do, you might want to read.
Well, because I mean, I would say obviously you're familiar with Monoprice, and they have
that dual, was it dual 12 or dual 15 that just came out?
that was just announced. They've got a I can't remember if it's dual 12 or dual 15, but they do have a dual one. But they also just have their regular 15-inch ported, which is what is it, $1,300 shipped? It's pretty reasonable. So
I don't know, man.
you know, I'm just saying to take a peek at Monoprice's monolith ported subwoofers, and that might be enough for you to go, oh yeah, that saves me a pile of time and actually costs about the same.
I'm looking at this foyer too, and they've got these dotted lines across, you know, each side of it. I'm wondering if they're supposed to be pocket doors.
I don't think so. I think that might be more of like a ceiling thing, you know?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, I'm just looking at it, and just, you know,
Because it looks like the family room has the dotted lines too, and I'm betting that's a like a raised ceiling, like a tray
raised
ceiling.
ceiling, maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. At the moment, he has a Denon X1500H, but he has plans to upgrade to a model that can do 5.2.4. In the meantime, if he continues to use his X1500H for a while, what do we think about connecting his 4 in-ceiling Atmos speakers in series, kind of like running multiple side surround speakers? I mean, sure. You just have connect them to your top middle.
Yeah.
And
you could. Although, I mean, how easy is it to rewire your in-ceiling speakers? Because if that's going to be a pain,
right,
I kind of probably wouldn't do it.
It's almost worth it to buy an external amp and just, you know, Y splitter out. If
Run
you're
them
gonna
in
do it that
parallel?
way. Yeah, run them in parallel.
Because I mean that you're going to wire them ahead of time anyway, so it'd be very easy to wire them in parallel. That's literally just connecting the, you know, 2 on one side to one amplifier output, and bingo, you've wired them in parallel. So that would be super. Although, I mean, no, I guess you can do series even there, because you can just wire together back at wherever they would meet. You wire the red from one to the black of the other.
Oh, I guess you could do it that way.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So you would do it not in the ceiling. You would do it at the wall.
You do it at the wall,
I mean,
yeah. So you can do okay.
Oh no. Oh
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah. You can go red to black. Yeah. Okay.
So red from the amp to red of speaker 1, black from the amp to black of speaker 2, and then red and
Whatever
black
wires
from
are
speaker
left,
to speaker.
twist them together.
Okay, yeah, okay. But I mean, should it? Well, go ahead. it's not
Knock yourself out. Dude.
Yeah, it's and if you hate the results, undo it. There, that one's a pretty simple one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
That's
All right,
about
who do we
it.
have left?
All right, we have on our list John H, Joel N. Is that all Joel? Yeah, that's all Joel. Kev, who wrote to us on Facebook. Mark H, Chris T, Clara, Francis, Bobby, and Derek. Ta-da.
All right. If you want your AV questions answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our 88 patrons over at patreon.com. Thank you, guys and gals.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. Thanks very much to our 88 patrons.
We want to thank AJ and Carl for correcting Rob. We always get a kick out of that, so thank you, guys.
Yes, I do appreciate it. I didn't notice it until AJ said something about it, so that's a good thing that you did. I don't know if I would have caught that.
I might be Lee forever.
That's right.
If it wasn't for those guys. All right, for AV Rant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com.
Let it go.
This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.